Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over the news for the 2026 Kansas governor's race where former Republican Governor Jeff Colyer launches a Kansas governor bid after being inspired by President Trump's campaign. The article announced that former Kansas governor and President Trump's 2024 Kansas chair Jeff Colyer announced on Wednesday his candidacy for Kansas governor in 2026. Colyer was lieutenant governor under Republican Governor Sam Brownback and finished out his term when Brownback left early. His announcement was made after losing to other Republicans twice in the last two primaries and surviving a major health scare. In his announcement, he said President Trump's actions during the last presidential campaign inspired him to try again. Colyer is the second major candidate to join the race following current Secretary of State Scott Schwab's announcement last winter, as well as two lesser-known candidates as well, Stacey Rogers and Doug Billings, all of which are vying for the Republican nomination. To date, there are no announced Democratic candidates. Okay. So, if you're unfamiliar with the state of Kansas and the current governor's race, let me give you a little bit of background. Let me go back to 2010, where Republican Governor Sam Brownback wins, I believe, his first term. Yes, it was his first term from the Democratic governor at the time, and Sam Brownback wins against an open race against a Democrat by 31.1%. As we know, 2010 was a great year for the Republicans, and 2014 was another very great year for the Republicans. Republicans won pretty much everywhere, including in Maryland and in Massachusetts and in even Illinois, but not so much for the state of Kansas, where the Republican Governor Sam Brownback was very unpopular in approval rating polls, and a lot of Democrats and Republicans in Kansas were looking at trying to unseat him in 2024. So, in what ended up being a very, very good night for the Republicans, Sam Brownback only won re-election by 3.7% in the Republican state of Kansas. Now come to 2018. Brownback and his administration are even more unpopular. Brownback actually, I believe, leaves office or resigns from office before his term is even done, as his administration is so unpopular. And now it's an open race where Colyer is actually, I believe, the interim governor. He was the lieutenant governor, now he was the interim governor from 2018 to 2019, going into this election, where the Democrat Laura Kelly runs against the Republican candidate Chris Kobach and against independent candidate Greg Orman, who, that name may be familiar to you if you remember the 2014 Senate race in the state of Kansas. Orman ran against the Republican Pat Roberts, who also seemed to be in potential danger of losing, in large part Orman being independent, being able to get candidates from both, or votes from the Republicans and Democrats, but also due to Sam Brownback being so unpopular, his administration being so unpopular, gave the Democrats a chance at making the governor's race and Senate race competitive in 2014. What happens is there's a lot of vote splitting where Orman gets about 6.5%, another candidate, Caldwell, gets about 1.9%, and Chris Kobach, the Republican, who has his own issues, by the way, who has his own scandals and electability questions, he only ends up getting around 43% of the vote, where Kelly, the Democrat, is able to get around 48.01%. She wins re-election in 2018, which, by the way, 2018, this is the midterm election after Trump was elected president. It was supposed to be a very good night for the Democrats. It ended up being a very good night for the Democrats without much of a surprise. On the governor's map overall, there was obviously states like California and New York and Pennsylvania at the time with a very popular Democratic governor, tilted the overall national vote, where Democrats got 51.4%, Republicans got 48.3%. So when all the votes were added up, Democrats won nationally by about 3 points. And Kansas went for the Democrat Kelly by about 5 points. So Kansas voted about 2 points to the left of the overall votes of the entire country among all the governor's races. And this is on the same map, for instance, where you see Republican winning governorships in Maryland with Larry Hogan, with Charlie Baker, Massachusetts, and with Phil Scott in Vermont. We saw Kansas go to the Democrat Laura Kelly. Okay, and you may think, all right, well, 2018, very good night for the Democrats. The next election will be up in 2022. It'll be a Republican midterm year. This is going to be a fluke. The race will flip back to the Republicans. And that didn't happen. It was a lot more of a closer race this time around, where there was less third-party vote splitting, and the Republicans were able to corral a lot more vote. I believe his name was Eric Schmidt, I believe, if I'm correct. He got 47.33% of the vote. The third-party candidates only got a combined about 3.1% or so. But the Democratic incumbent, Laura Kelly, was actually able to gain on her margins from 2018, get another point or so in support, and win re-election with 49.54% to Schmidt's 47.33. When you look at this map in Kansas, and I'll go more in depth on the presidential map as well, you can see Kansas is mostly all red, but the pockets of few Democratic votes in this election, like around the Kansas City area, is where a lot of the Democratic votes really stacked up. And I'll show you the 2024 map, just give you an idea of what the percentages are in these areas. Okay, so this is the Kansas from the 2024 presidential race. It was a 16-point win for President Trump. Right here, this little white spot right here, this is where the border with Missouri is, where Kansas City is. So these two counties, Winona County and Johnson County, are sort of where the Kansas part of Kansas City is. And these two areas voted for Kamala Harris 61% to 37% for Donald Trump. Johnson County voted 53-45 for Harris over Trump. And just looking at the largest counties in the state, Johnson County is the largest county by population. Shawnee is down here at 81,000, second most big, and then Sedgwick, 214,152. Sedgwick is what the city of Wichita, Kansas is. It voted for Donald Trump by 56.42. But let's see how Laura Kelly did in 2022. Laura Kelly was able to win Johnson 59-39%, winning it by about 20 points. Wichita, which again voted for Donald Trump 56-42, Laura Kelly won 50% to 47%. Now we can look at Douglas County, which voted 76-22 for Kelly, Winona County 68-29 for Kelly, and then Topeka, Kansas, this is Shawnee County, third largest county in the state, voted for Kelly 60-38. So Laura Kelly, she only won a handful of counties in the state of Kansas, but she won the areas where a lot of people are living in a densely populated area. And this is how a Democrat in a state like Kansas wins an incredibly close election. It is worth noting, she did get 49.5% of the vote, so she did win by a plurality. But, I mean, look at the similarities, though. President Trump did very well in Wichita and Sedgwick County. He won by about 30,000 votes in this area of the state. Laura Kelly won Wichita by about 5,000 votes. But given that it's a midterm environment and she was able to get more Democratic votes in areas like Douglas and Johnson and in Winona and in Shawnee and in Geary County and Riley County, these areas were able to help boost her margins just enough to get a very close victory. Now we come to the 2026 Kansas governor race, where, that's the Senate, here we go. On the governor's side of things, the incumbent governor, Laura Kelly, is now term limited due to Kansas's constitution and she cannot seek a third consecutive term. So the Republicans immediately should be feeling optimistic about flipping back this race. As the last two elections at the governor level have been Democratic wins, at the presidential level, Kansas voted safe for Donald Trump in 2024, likely for Donald Trump in 2020 by just 0.5% under a 15-point safe margin, and 2016 it was a safe Republican margin. So 2 out of the last 3 presidential races, Kansas has gone safe. The Senate races in 2022, it voted safe for the Republican senator. 2020, it was likely for the Republican senator, and in 2016, it was safe for the Republican senator. But the problem is the governor's races in Kansas where things have been more competitive. But the good news for the Republicans is this time around, Laura Kelly cannot be the Democratic candidate. And the race to replace her as the Democratic candidate still remains open. Right now, a state senator, Cindy Hochler, is the only candidate that's expressed interest. There are some other potential candidates as well, including David Tolan, the lieutenant governor of Kansas. He probably presents the best chance for the Democrats at holding this governor's race. But even still, without the incumbent governor running again, who won by 2 points last time, it's probably going to be an uphill battle for Democrats to win this race. On the Republican side of things, Jeff Colyer entering the race as the former governor of Kansas in a Republican primary who's touting his support of President Trump certainly gives him a lot of name recognition and weight out of the gate for this race. Also in this race is Doug Billings, a podcaster, Charlotte O'Hara, a former Johnson County commissioner, Stacey Rogers, a consignment sale business owner, and Scott Schwab, the Kansas Secretary of State. If I had to guess right now, because there is no polling data for this Republican primary, when the first poll is done, Scott Schwab and Jeff Colyer are going to be the 2 leading candidates at this time. And unless other candidates jump in the race, I expect it to come down to Schwab and Colyer to be the Republican nominee. Who will end up being, that all remains to be seen, but I think one of those two would be the leaders right now. Ty Masterson, the president of the Kansas Senate, also has an announcement pending, so that could be coming out in the next few days or so. Dayton Moore, a senior advisor to the Texas Rangers and former president of the Kansas City Royals, has expressed interest in running, as well as Vicki Schmidt, the Kansas Insurance Commissioner. Chris Kobach, who ran for the Republican, or was the Republican nominee back in 2018, who lost to Laura Kelly, has also been listed as a potential candidate. He has given no interest that he may be running at this time, though. As for this race, right now Cook Politico has it as lean Republican as a flip. Inside Elections has it as battleground. Sabato Crystal Ball has it as a flip at this time. As for my own personal rankings, I could very well see Kansas right now being lean or likely Republican, but given that the last 2 elections were won by a Democrat, I do think that Kansas starts out, I just did Ohio in my last video, Kansas starts out as one of the 6 battleground races I'm watching very closely, including Nevada, Arizona, Kansas, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia. Of the 6 I'm watching very closely, Kansas would be the first flip of the night. I do have the Republicans winning it, but right now, until we have more information, I am going to keep it as lean Republican at this time. It's less about what the Republicans do and more what the Democrats do, because Laura Kelly not being at the top of the ticket is certainly going to hurt Democrats a lot. And depending on who the Democratic nominee is, if it's a state senator that no one in the state has really heard of, well, I could see the rating in Kansas going up to likely Republican pretty easily, and maybe in the right situation, even a safe Republican rating if President Trump is doing actually pretty good by the midterms in 2026. But with the possibility of the lieutenant governor being the candidate, for now I'm starting Kansas off as a modest lean Republican as we wait for more information out of this race. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.